Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. A lot of people have been asking me what's going on with the 454 big block Chevy that I pulled out of the Chevelle back in 2023. Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about the problems that I had, why I have another engine block, and yet I have an engine being completed right now. So stay tuned. Back in September of 2003, the engine builder that did Andrew's 454 called me up and asked me if I wanted to do my engine. I of course said yes, and I took the engine out and I fully disassembled it in October. Unfortunately, he had some sort of injury that required emergency back surgery. Now, I wasn't aware of the extent of the injury, but it looks like it was a life-altering injury, and his engine building days are all but over. Now, we wish him the best, but it did mean I needed to find a new engine builder. I shopped around locally and found a shop that had some good machinist equipment like a Rottler. I gave them the block and they essentially rejected it. Bottom line, they didn't like the notches that were ground into the cylinders as one was a little bit low. So I bought another 289 casting 2-bolt main Mark IV block that hadn't been bored or decked. I did all the same work to it as the old block, just with smaller release in the cylinders. However, I didn't like that the main caps were a bit looser than my original block, plus it was completely coated to protect it from rust. Now my stubborn mind kept telling me that I should still use my original block. So I went back to the engine shop with my original block. We went forward with boring it to 4.31 inches and had it zero decked, mocked it up to make sure everything checked out okay. It was given the green light, and we can finally move on with the engine build. Let me show you a couple of parts that are going in the new engine build, starting with the bottom end. This is a Molnar crankshaft. It is a 4-inch stroke, internally balanced. And a lot of people have asked me, why did I not go with a 4¼ inch stroke for a 496? Well, I do a lot of road racing, or a fair amount at least, and with the sustained RPM, I wanted the better windage control with a 4-inch stroke versus a 4¼ inch stroke, and also I didn't need the extra torque of a 496. Plus, if I ever get my dream engine, which is a 509 big block Chevy, which will require a new block, I could still use this crankshaft. The rods are Molnar 6.385. You can see they look good. Certainly a lot stronger than the stock ones, also a lot lighter. That's good news. The pistons are Moly forged 4.31 inches. You can see the ring sizes. It comes with the piston pins as well as the rings. And you can see I've done some work to these. You can see I filed off all these sharp edges, particularly in this area right here, just to relieve any hot spots and resist detonation. You can see the part number if you guys are curious about it. It not only has a full coating, but it also has a skirt coating. So it seems like a pretty good value. 599 grams, so significantly lighter than my previous pistons. We have an ATI super damper, which looks great, right? And connecting to the camshaft is a Cloy's double roller timing set. Nice gear. This one is adjustable, so you can retard or advance the timing as needed. The camshaft is a Claysmith hydraulic roller. Looking at the cam card, you can see it is 229 duration on the intake side, 241 on the exhaust. It does say 600 for lift on the intake, which is not true. I have measured the lobes. It is actually 590 on the intake and 569 on the exhaust. And it comes with a 109 lobe separation. The lifters are the Silverline Isky HPX series, but they are made by Johnson, so we know they are top quality. You can see they look great. The valve springs are also Isky, the 8205. They are a relatively heavy spring rate. I went with this based off of recommendations of pressures when talking to the camshaft manufacturers. And it should set up at about 150, 155 pounds on the seat and somewhere around 400, 410 on over the nose. The cylinder heads are Brodix Race Right 270s, obviously aluminum, and I opted for the CNC chambers, which I highly recommend if you're going to buy these heads. The difference between the CNC version and the as cast version is enormous. Now these are supposed to spec out to 119 cc's, intake valve 225, and a 188 exhaust valve. You can see I've done a little bit of work in the exhaust side, just smoothing it out, and also some real minor touch-ups in the intake side, so small stuff, but this is where the power is going to come from. The reason why I chose the Brodix over something like an AFR is because the exhaust ports are in the factory location, so I shouldn't have to make any adjustments to my exhaust. The header should bolt up exactly like it did before. I like that. So my original 289 block was used. It was zero decked and bored to 431, as well as honed with a torque plate. Naturally, the reliefs in the block got smaller after boring and decking. I decided to go with Chevy orange for the block, which will certainly look different in my car since it used to be black. I chose to have my engine internally balanced. The Molnar crankshaft does not come balanced, so you can see the initial spin, the crankshaft is out a lot. 924 to 930 pounds of force at just 6,000 RPMs. That's insane. What's our out part in here?
This is what we look for, is to get the 0.2 ounce per inch. So that ends 0.12, this ends 0.19.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're happy.
Yes.
The final balance came out to 2.8 to 7.9 pounds of force at 6,000 RPM. The bottom end was assembled with ARP main studs just to keep things a little bit stronger. Clearance was set to 26 to 28 thou in the mains and 26 to 28 thou in the rods, which should give good oil pressure, and everything was assembled with driven assembly lube. The Molnar 6.385 rod and Molly piston are a lot lighter than the previous combo, a combined 247 grams lighter. With all 8 cylinders, I will drop 4.35 pounds off the rotating assembly. The ATI balancer was another 3.5 pounds lighter than the stock balancer.
It is zeroed.
Yep.
So basically that's 10 down below to about almost 15, 16, 17 thou.
Comes up 15 thou easy.
Yeah, but that's cold. When the engine heats up, that's going to get tighter and won't rock as much.
It won't rock as much, okay. The pistons were CC'd, and when you factor in the minor grinding that I did and the reliefs I did on the block, they came to 25.7 cc's, which is 2.3 cc's less than the advertised 28. Now, of course, that's going to drop compression a little bit. A little grinding was required in the chamber just to ensure the pistons didn't touch, which was an unexpected mod. Right in this area here, it was too close to the cylinder head chamber, so they had to do some grinding on the head. The chambers were CC'd as well and came out to 120.4 cc's. I ordered them to be 119 cc's, so this was a bit of a surprise for a CNC chamber. We opted to deck the heads, which brought the chambers down to 116.2 cc's. Setting up the cylinder heads meant measuring the install heights on all 16 valves using the exact locators and retainers. Valve springs were checked for spring rates and coil bind. I'm using an Isky 8205 dual valve spring. I had some conflicting information from some cam techs, and perhaps I would have went with the standard Brodix spring. Nevertheless, I chose to set up my springs to be about 155 pounds seat and 420 open on the intake, and 147-ish seat and 400 plus open on the exhaust. It's worth mentioning that the 225 intake valves weigh 147.5 grams, and the 188 exhaust valves weigh 127 grams. CompCam's locators and tool steel retainers and locks, plus Brodix valve seals complete the valve spring assembly.
What are those blue things?
Yeah. My factory iron heads weighed 73.6 pounds each assembled, and the Brodix heads weigh 38.6 pounds each assembled. A massive 70-pound reduction off my old engine. Some parts have shown up, mainly the Manley push rods. These are a swedged end 135 wall 3/8 800. These should be the exhaust push rods. Intake are 135 wall 3/8 by 7 900. You'll see it's a one-piece design. And the reason I went with 135 wall over your typical 0800, or sorry, 080, is because I want a little more stiffness. I'm aiming for valve train stability, and yeah, I'm not running super heavy springs, and I'm not going crazy on the RPMs. It'll probably be done by 6200, but I want to make sure that my valve train is stable to 6500 and above. At least that's the goal, because if I ever miss a shift or something like that, then, you know, I'm not going to worry about the valve train losing control and, you know, maybe tagging a valve or something like that. So that's why we did that. They say you can't go overkill on push rods, and I can't get a 7/16 push rod in there, so we went with the thicker wall. Spark plugs, V-Power, NGK 2756. It's a number 6 heat range, 3/4 inch length to them, so they do fit the Brodix heads perfectly. And they are a resistor plug because I am running EFI, so that should be good. I got a whole box of them, like 24 of them, so that's good. And then finally, Cometic head gaskets, and it's part number 5330 045. So obviously an 045 thickness, but you're gonna say 454 bore. Why the hell did I do that when I have my block board out to 431? Well, when I did the notches for my valve reliefs on the block, I used a different gasket. It was the only one I could get my hands on. I think it was a Felpro 1071. And I was under the impression that these reliefs were all the same, give or take. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Your standard Felpro 039 or the Cometics, they seem to be the same, but that Felpro 1071 was different, and it actually closes it in a little bit. And that means that some of the reliefs were too close, or like the fire ring was too close to those notches edges, and the builder wasn't comfortable with it, so we went with the 454 bore. Why didn't I just go with that 1071 gasket anyways? Because they only offer it in 2 sizes that I could, I believe, an 039, which is too thin for a zero deck block, and I think it's 051 or 053, which I didn't like the quench. I didn't like the compression that it made, so I wanted an 045, and that's why we went this way. I'm going to try to dyno it with my headers. They're a Hooker 2455, 2-inch primary, 3.5-inch collector, but I have to put in my O2 sensor for my EFI first. I'll first apply a little bit of this anti-seize to the threads. Not a lot though. This is a 22 mil. We'll do the break-in with the Driven break-in oil, BR40 conventional 10W40. Because I have a hydraulic roller, I don't have to break in the cam, so that's good. I'll be reusing my Fitech EFI. This is the Go EFI 8 1200 horsepower power adder unit. Obviously, I've never had 1200 horsepower, and I likely never will, but I bought this so I could expand for bigger power because this does have the 8 injectors, so I know this will be fine with the new engine. Final specs on the engine, a 60 over 454 given a bore of 4.31 inches, combined with a 4-inch stroke giving 467 cubic inches. 10.2 to 1 compression ratio, Brodix Race Right 270 heads with CNC chambers, 225 intake valves, 188 exhaust, Isky 8205 valve springs, tool steel retainers, and a 135 well Manley 3/8 push rod. 6.385 rods, Clay Smith hydraulic roller cam with 229, 241 duration at 050, 590, 569 lift, and a 109 lobe separation angle. And I believe the cam was installed at 105 degrees. My old comp cam's 1.7 ratio roller rockers were used. Edelbrock air gap intake manifold, the Fitech 30012 power adder EFI with timing control, the same aluminum underdrive pulleys I had on before, a Moroso 20403 6-quart oil pan, and finally, 2-inch primary Hooker headers. I have an engine. It is built. It's been such a long time coming. I'm super excited. The next stop, dyno. Ooh, can't wait for that one. You guys tell me what do you think it's going to make. I have an idea what it should make, but of course that's just my opinion. But leave a comment. How much horsepower, how much torque is it going to make? I'm curious to see who's going to get the closest. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to rip out the wiring for the Fitech on my Chevelle. That sucks, but I'm going to have to do it just so they can dyno it. But hey, it is what it is. Doesn't matter. I'm still super pumped up. So make sure you subscribe for the next video, which is going to be the dyno. Leave a like. And as always, thanks for watching.